The CEO was in the middle of networking with potential investors when the spotlight shifted to the stage. His heart stopped as he recognized her confident smile and the three identical boys standing proudly beside her and the distinguished older man who once was his mentor. But before we dive into the full story, let me know where you're watching from and what time it is. Now subscribe to the channel and let's get started. Boston, 2018. The Reynolds Investments office occupied 3 entire floors in the financial district, with sprawling views of the harbor. Jasmine Washington, 28, senior marketing and strategy analyst, slipped into the executive bathroom on the 30th floor and stared at the pregnancy test in her trembling hands. Positive. The third test confirmed what the other 2 had already revealed. With honors from NYU, Jasmine had grown up in the Bronx with a single mother who worked double shifts as a nurse. Her determination had propelled her to the top of her class and to her position at Reynolds Investments, where she'd met Michael Reynolds 2 years ago. As heir to the financial empire founded by his grandfather, Michael represented everything the American system revered. White, wealthy, from a traditional Boston family, Harvard-educated, and possessing a calculated charm that opened every door. Their relationship had begun as a corporate secret, but soon Michael had claimed her publicly, moving her into his penthouse apartment in Beacon Hill. For Jasmine, it seemed she was finally claiming her place in the American dream. Her colleagues viewed her as the lucky girl who had landed Boston's most eligible bachelor. She remembered their first meeting, the quarterly strategy review where her data-driven presentation had caught his attention. "Ms. Washington," he'd said, lingering after everyone else had left, "your insights on Asian market penetration were refreshing." His eyes had held something beyond professional interest, and Jasmine, despite her professional caution, had felt a flutter of excitement. Slipping the test into her purse, she checked her reflection in the mirror. No one would guess her secret, yet. She straightened her Burberry blazer, a gift from Michael, and returned to her office to finish the quarterly projections before heading home to prepare dinner. That evening, while the meal she had carefully prepared grew cold on the Italian marble table, Jasmine took a deep breath and shared the news. "I'm pregnant, Michael. Actually, they're triplets." Michael, checking emails on his MacBook, slowly raised his eyes. His face, normally animated for cameras and investors, hardened. "Are you sure they're mine?" The question hit Jasmine like a slap. "How can you even ask that?" He closed his laptop with studied calm. "You know this isn't the time. We're about to expand into Asia. The board is watching my every move. I'm not asking you to abandon your plans, Michael. I'm just sharing that we're having children." Children. He repeated the word as if it were a foreign term. "Do you really think the heir to Reynolds Investments can show up with a black woman from the Bronx and 3 mixed-race children at Boston High Society events? My parents would never accept it. The board would never accept it. It's 2018, Michael, not 1950. You're smart, Jasmine. You always have been, but you're also naive." He opened his desk drawer and pulled out a checkbook. "Let's resolve this like adults." "Resolve? There's nothing to resolve. I'm having these babies." Michael filled out a check with deliberate movements. $500,000. Enough for a fresh start anywhere. Away from Boston. Away from me. Jasmine felt tears burning her eyes. "You're paying me to disappear?" "I'm offering you an opportunity. Be realistic, Jasmine. A black woman from the Bronx with 3 children? You'd be a burden to my corporate and family image." He slid the check across the table. "You were never enough for this world, Jasmine. You'll never be welcome in the circles I frequent. Do yourself a favor and disappear." The words penetrated like shards of ice. In 2 years of relationship, she had never imagined that behind the smiles and expensive gifts existed this man. Cold, calculating, cruel. "I want you out of my apartment by tomorrow." "Your apartment? We've lived together for a year." "My name on the lease, my furniture, my address." He stood up, grabbing his coat. "I found your things already packed when I arrived. They're in storage. And oh, Sullivan from HR is awaiting your resignation letter. I don't need distractions in the company during this phase." Before she could respond, Michael left, leaving behind only the check on the table and the echo of his words. Never enough. In the 24 hours that followed, Jasmine discovered her key no longer worked. Her corporate cards had been blocked, and her professional email deactivated. Her contacts in common with Michael suddenly stopped answering her calls. The $500,000 check burned in her purse, money she refused to accept. 3 nights at Boston's South Station. That's how long Jasmine spent sleeping on benches, using the public bathroom to wash up, while trying to process what had happened to her life. Pregnant with triplets, jobless, without references, as Reynolds Investments was her only significant employment, homeless. On the 4th day, with only $237 in her checking account and constant pregnancy nausea, she called the one person she knew would never abandon her, her mother, Loretta Washington. "I'll catch the next bus to New York," Jasmine said, swallowing her pride along with her tears. She returned to the small 2-bedroom apartment in the Bronx where she grew up. Loretta, a 55-year-old nurse with advanced arthritis, embraced her daughter without asking questions. In the weeks that followed, reality imposed itself. The $1,800 monthly rent, medical costs for a high-risk triplet pregnancy, the need to furnish a space for 3 babies. Jasmine sent out 87 resumes in 2 weeks. Only 3 responded, all offering salaries below $45,000 a year, insufficient to support 4 people in New York. In her 5th month of pregnancy, when her belly made it impossible to hide her condition, Jasmine accepted a job as a receptionist at a small advertising agency in the Bronx, earning $16 an hour. At night, she did freelance digital marketing work, sleeping only 4 hours a night. During a checkup in her 6th month, Dr. Patterson looked concerned at her results. "Your blood pressure is dangerously high, Ms. Washington. You need more rest, or you risk premature delivery." That night, sitting in the small kitchen while her mother slept after a double shift at the hospital, Jasmine opened her laptop and found news that seemed to mock her misery. Michael Reynolds announces engagement to Catherine Blackwell, heiress to Blackwell Media, wedding set for June at the Plaza Hotel. The photo showed Michael smiling, arm around a slim blonde with a huge diamond on her finger, the same hand that had signed the check to remove Jasmine from his life. Something broke inside her at that moment. Not her heart, that was already in pieces. It was her compliance, her acceptance of limits imposed by others. Jasmine opened a new document and began typing furiously. It wasn't a letter or a rant, it was a business plan. "Triad Solutions," she typed as the title. 3 babies, 3 pillars of a new company that would unite digital marketing, data analysis, and brand strategy. Everything she knew, everything she mastered, transformed into her own empire. When the sun rose, Jasmine had a detailed 5-year plan. On the wall, she posted a yellow sticky note with the exact words Michael had used. "You were never enough." "I'll make you proud of who your mother is," she whispered, caressing the belly where her 3 children were growing. "And one day, I'll show the world exactly how enough I can be." That night in the small kitchen, while staring at Michael's engagement announcement, Jasmine couldn't have imagined that in just 5 years, she would be sitting in her office in New York's Flatiron Building, commanding a $2 billion empire, about to purchase the company of the man who had discarded her as not enough. The sticky note with Michael's cruel words stared back at Jasmine, a yellow reminder of everything she was fighting against. With only $237 left in her bank account and constant morning sickness that persisted throughout the day, Jasmine knew she had exhausted her options in Boston. Her fingers trembled as she dialed the number she knew by heart. "Mom?" Her voice cracked despite her best efforts to sound composed. "Jasmine? Baby, what's wrong?" Loretta Washington's voice, warm and concerned, flooded through the phone. Jasmine closed her eyes, leaning against the cold wall of the bus station. "I need to come home." "What happened? Are you okay?" I'll explain everything when I see you. I'm going to catch the next bus to New York." There was a brief pause before Loretta said, "Your room is just like you left it, baby. Come home." Jasmine swallowed hard, pride and tears mingling in her throat. "I'll be there tonight." At the ticket counter, Jasmine counted out $67 for a one-way ticket to New York City. The cashier glanced at her visible pregnancy and then quickly averted her eyes. Jasmine had grown accustomed to these looks, pity mixed with judgment. The bus ride was uncomfortable, the seats too narrow for her expanding body. 5 months pregnant with triplets meant she looked closer to 8 months with a single baby. Each bump in the road sent waves of nausea through her. Jasmine closed her eyes and tried to focus on anything but the crushing reality of her situation. 4 hours later, the bus pulled into Port Authority. Jasmine struggled with her single suitcase, all she had managed to grab before being locked out of Michael's apartment, and made her way to the subway. One more transfer, and 40 minutes later she was climbing the familiar stairs to the 5th-floor walk-up in the Bronx where she had grown up. Before she could knock, the door swung open. Loretta Washington stood there, her nurse's scrubs still on, lines of exhaustion etched around her eyes. Without a word, she pulled her daughter into a fierce embrace. "My baby," she whispered, then stepped back, eyes widening as she noticed Jasmine's swollen belly. "Oh, Lord." "I'm having triplets, Mom," Jasmine said, tears finally breaking free. "And I'm doing it alone." That night, lying in her childhood bedroom beneath posters of Michelle Obama and Oprah Winfrey, role models she'd chosen as a teenager, Jasmine stared at the ceiling, listening to her mother's muffled cough through the thin walls. Loretta had tried to hide the winces of pain as she moved around the kitchen earlier, but Jasmine had noticed the prescription bottles on the counter, medication for rheumatoid arthritis, now advanced to the point where simple tasks caused agony. "I'm sorry, Mom," Jasmine whispered to the darkness. "I'm supposed to be taking care of you by now, not the other way around." Morning brought harsh clarity. Seated at the small kitchen table, Jasmine calculated numbers on a worn notepad. Rent for the 2-bedroom apartment, $1,800. Utilities, roughly $300. Food for 3 adults, and soon 3 infants, at least $800. Medical costs for a high-risk pregnancy without corporate insurance, potentially catastrophic. "We'll manage," Loretta said, setting down a cup of peppermint tea to help with Jasmine's nausea. "We always have." "I need a job," Jasmine replied, already opening her laptop. "A good one." Over the next 2 weeks, Jasmine applied to 87 companies, tailoring each resume and cover letter meticulously. She emphasized her NYU education, her analytical skills, her marketing expertise, and carefully omitted her pregnancy. At the local cyber cafe, where she paid $6 an hour for internet access because they couldn't afford it at home yet, Jasmine checked her email obsessively. 3 responses came back, one from a nonprofit offering $38,000 a year, another from a small marketing firm offering $42,000, and a third from a retail chain offering $44,000 for an assistant manager position. None would cover their expenses. "What about Reynolds Investments?" Loretta asked one evening. "Don't they have a New York office?" Jasmine's face hardened. "I can't go back there. Michael would make sure I never get hired." She didn't tell her mother the full story, not about the check she'd torn up, not about Michael's cruel dismissal of her and their unborn children. She couldn't bear to see the pain and rage in her mother's eyes. By her 5th month of pregnancy, Jasmine's condition was impossible to hide. During an interview at a mid-sized advertising agency, the hiring manager's eyes kept drifting to her stomach. "You look... How far along are you?" he finally asked. 5 months, Jasmine replied evenly. "With triplets." His expression shifted subtly. "And the father? Not in the picture." "I see." He shuffled the papers on his desk. "Well, we're actually looking for someone who can commit to long hours, travel occasionally. With your situation." Jasmine stood up, gathering her portfolio. "Thank you for your time." Outside, she leaned against the building, fighting back tears of frustration. 7 interviews, 7 rejections, some subtle, some blatant, all related to her pregnancy. The next day, scrolling through job listings at the cyber cafe, Jasmine saw an opening for a receptionist at a small advertising agency in the Bronx. $16 an hour, 30 hours a week. Not enough, but it was something. "It's what we have available now," the office manager, a woman named Gloria, told her after a brief interview. "But if you're as good as your resume suggests, there might be room for growth." That night, Jasmine updated her budget spreadsheet. Even with the receptionist job, they were short nearly $1,000 a month. She opened a new browser tab and searched freelance digital marketing jobs. Her new routine was punishing. Wake at 5, help her mother prepare for her hospital shift, take the subway to the advertising agency by 8:30, answer phones and organize files until 3, come home, nap for 1 hour, then work on freelance projects until midnight. Design websites for $50 each. Write social media copy for $20 per post. Create email marketing campaigns for $100. 4 hours of sleep. Repeat. During her 6th-month checkup, Dr. Patterson frowned at her blood pressure reading. 150/95. "This is concerning, Ms. Washington." He looked over his glasses at her. "High blood pressure is particularly dangerous in multiple pregnancies. You're risking preeclampsia, premature labor, even placental abruption." "What should I do?" Jasmine asked, knowing the answer before he spoke. "Rest more. Reduce stress. Ideally, you should be on bed rest." Jasmine almost laughed. "Rest? With bills piling up and 3 babies on the way?" "I'll try," she promised hollowly. That night, after her mother had gone to bed following a grueling double shift, Jasmine sat at the kitchen table with her laptop, researching affordable cribs and car seats. An email notification popped up, a news alert she'd foolishly set up weeks ago. Michael Reynolds announces engagement to Catherine Blackwell, heiress to Blackwell Media. Wedding set for June at the Plaza Hotel. Her finger hovered over the delete button, but instead she clicked. The article loaded with a large photograph. Michael in a tailored Armani suit, arm wrapped possessively around a willowy blonde whose diamond engagement ring caught the light spectacularly. They stood on the steps of what appeared to be her family's Hampton estate, both smiling like they'd invented happiness. Catherine Blackwell, 26, daughter of media mogul William Blackwell, will wed Michael Reynolds, 31, heir to the Reynolds Investments fortune, in what promises to be the society wedding of the year, the caption read. Jasmine stared at Michael's hand on Catherine's waist, the same hand that had written that degrading check, the same hand that had once caressed her body with apparent devotion. The engagement had been announced barely 3 months after he'd thrown Jasmine out. Something snapped inside her in that moment, not her heart, that had already been shattered beyond recognition. What broke was her acceptance of the limitations others had placed on her, her willingness to play by rules that were designed for her to lose. With sudden, fierce clarity, Jasmine opened a new document on her laptop. She titled it, Triad Solutions. Her fingers flew across the keyboard, no longer typing job applications or begging emails to former contacts. Instead, she outlined a business plan for a company that would combine everything she knew: digital marketing analytics, consumer behavior prediction, and brand strategy optimization. 3 core services, mirroring the 3 lives growing inside her. Through the night she worked, pausing only when a sharp kick from one of the babies demanded her attention. When dawn broke, casting pale light across the cramped kitchen, Jasmine had a complete 5-year business plan, financial projections, and marketing strategy. She printed a single page, the executive summary, and taped it to the refrigerator. Then, she took a yellow sticky note and wrote the exact words Michael had used that night. "You were never enough." This went on the wall beside her bed, where it would be the first thing she saw each morning. "I'll make you proud of who your mother is," she whispered, hands cradling her swollen belly where one of the triplets was performing what felt like gymnastics. And one day, I'll show the world exactly how enough I can be. While staring at that small yellow note in the tiny kitchen of her mother's Bronx apartment, Jasmine didn't know that the business plan she'd just created during a night of righteous anger would, in just 5 years, become a company valued at billions that would purchase the empire Michael thought so precious. The yellow sticky note bearing Michael's cruel words had become Jasmine's North Star, guiding her through dark moments of doubt. But on this sweltering August morning, 8 months into her pregnancy, even that motivation couldn't ease the discomfort of her swollen body as she sat at the reception desk of Bronx Creative Solutions. "Ms. Washington, can you file these before lunch?" her manager asked, dropping a stack of folders onto her desk. "Of course," Jasmine replied, shifting uncomfortably in her chair. Her ankles had ballooned to twice their normal size, and a persistent pain radiated across her lower back. The triplets seemed especially active today, tiny feet and elbows jabbing at her insides with increasing urgency. She reached for the first folder when a sudden sharp cramp seized her abdomen. Jasmine gasped, clutching the edge of her desk as the pain intensified. "Jasmine?" Gloria, the office manager, approached with concern. "Are you all right?" Another contraction answered before she could, this one strong enough to make her cry out. I think I'm in labor," she managed between labored breaths. "It's too early. They're not due for another month." Gloria's eyes widened. "Someone call 911!" she shouted, rushing to Jasmine's side. "Hang on, honey. Help is coming." The office erupted into controlled chaos. Someone brought water, another grabbed Jasmine's purse and phone. Through the haze of pain, she managed to call her mother, who was finishing her shift at Bronx General. "Mom," she gasped when Loretta answered. "The babies are coming. They're taking me to the hospital now." "I'm already here." Loretta's voice was steady despite the fear Jasmine could hear underneath. "I'll meet you in emergency. Stay calm, baby. Breathe like we practiced." The ambulance ride was a blur of sirens, concerned paramedic faces, and increasingly frequent contractions. "Blood pressure 160/100, she heard one say. "Possible preeclampsia. Alert obstetrics, we've got a preterm triplet delivery incoming." At the hospital, things moved with terrifying speed. Dr. Patterson met her at the entrance, his face grave as he reviewed her vitals. "Jasmine, your blood pressure is dangerously high and you're showing signs of placental abruption. We need to perform an emergency C-section immediately." "But they're too early," Jasmine protested weakly, another contraction stealing her breath. 32 weeks is early, but your babies have better chances outside than in right now," he explained, already directing nurses to prep her for surgery. "Your mother is changing out of her scrubs. She'll be with you in a moment." Loretta appeared minutes later, her nurse's uniform exchanged for hospital-issued scrubs, her face a mask of professional calm that couldn't quite hide her terror. She grasped Jasmine's hand. "I'm here, baby. Everything will be all right." "Mom, I'm scared," Jasmine whispered as they wheeled her toward the operating room. "I know, but you're stronger than you realize," Loretta replied, squeezing her hand. "Your babies need that strength now." In the operating room, a spinal block numbed her from the chest down. Jasmine stared at the blue surgical drape erected across her midsection, Loretta's hand firmly in hers, as Dr. Patterson and his team worked with focused intensity. "First baby coming," he announced moments later. A tiny, indignant cry pierced the clinical atmosphere of the operating room. "It's a boy," Dr. Patterson said, briefly holding up a minute red-faced infant before passing him to a waiting neonatal team. Tears streamed down Jasmine's face as 2 more cries joined the first within minutes. "All boys," the doctor confirmed. "They're small but fighting." "Can I see them?" Jasmine asked, straining to glimpse her sons. "They need to go to the NICU immediately," a nurse explained gently. "But they're all breathing on their own, which is excellent for 32-weekers. When Jasmine woke in recovery, Her first sensation was emptiness. For months, her body had been shared with 3 others, and now they were gone. Panic seized her until Loretta appeared at her bedside. "The babies?" Jasmine asked immediately. "They're doing well," Loretta assured her, though Jasmine could see the worry behind her smile. "4 pounds each, give or take an ounce. They're in incubators, but the neonatologist says their lungs are surprisingly mature." A nurse entered with 3 Polaroid photos. "Would you like to see your sons?" Jasmine reached for the photos with trembling hands. 3 tiny faces, eyes scrunched closed, tubes and wires connecting their minuscule bodies to machines. Despite their medical trappings, she could already see hints of their father in their features, the shape of their noses, the curve of their brows. "They're beautiful," she whispered. Later that evening, a hospital administrator knocked softly on her door. "Ms. Washington, I'm Craig Daniels from Patient Financial Services. Do you have a moment to discuss your situation?" Jasmine nodded tiredly. Her body ached from surgery, her heart ached from separation from her babies, and now came the financial reality she'd been dreading. "I understand you have limited insurance coverage," he began delicately. "I'm on the basic plan through my employer," Jasmine confirmed. "I've only been there 3 months." Daniels nodded sympathetically. "The NICU costs approximately $5,000 per day per baby. With triplets, we're looking at $15,000 daily. Even with insurance, your out-of-pocket exposure is significant." The numbers hit Jasmine like physical blows. She thought of her meager savings, the freelance projects she'd have to abandon during recovery, the receptionist job she'd likely lose. "There are assistance programs," Daniels continued, seeing her distress, "and we can arrange a payment plan, but I wanted you to understand the situation." When he left, Jasmine turned to her mother, who had remained silent throughout the exchange. "How am I going to do this, Mom? I can't even afford to bring them home, let alone raise them." Loretta took her hand. "One day at a time, baby. That's how we'll do it." The next morning, a nurse helped Jasmine into a wheelchair. "Ready to meet your sons properly?" In the NICU, 3 incubators sat side by side, each containing a tiny boy. The neonatologist, Dr. Chen, greeted Jasmine warmly. "Your boys are fighters, Ms. Washington. They're doing remarkably well for their gestational age." Jasmine reached a tentative hand through the porthole of the first incubator, gently touching her son's miniature fingers. Can I hold them?" "One at a time," Dr. Chen nodded. "We call it kangaroo care. Skin-to-skin contact is incredibly beneficial." Tears flowed freely as a nurse carefully placed the first baby against Jasmine's chest. "This is baby A," the nurse said. "You'll need to name them soon for the birth certificates." Looking down at the tiny face pressed against her heart, Jasmine whispered, "Aaron." For the second, slightly smaller baby, Elijah. And for the third, the smallest but most active, Jordan. "Strong names," Loretta approved, wiping away her own tears. During the long nights in the hospital, after visitors had gone and nurses moved quietly through dimmed halls, Jasmine used her cell phone to continue refining her business plan. The idea that had begun in anger was now fueled by something more powerful, the fierce determination to create a future for her sons. 2 weeks later, Aaron, Elijah, and Jordan were deemed strong enough to go home. The apartment that had seemed small before now felt impossibly tiny, with 3 bassinets crammed into Jasmine's bedroom. There were no proper cribs, just second-hand bassinets Loretta had found through her hospital connections. On their first night home, as Jasmine sat in a worn rocking chair feeding Jordan while Aaron and Elijah slept nearby, her phone rang. It was Gloria from the advertising agency. "Jasmine, I'm so sorry," she began, and Jasmine knew immediately what was coming. "We've held your position as long as we could, but with the economy tightening, we need someone full-time." "I understand," Jasmine replied, her voice steady despite the panic rising within. "Thank you for the opportunity." After hanging up, she looked around the cramped bedroom at her sleeping sons, at the medical bills stacked on her nightstand, at the calendar marking days until rent was due. Rock bottom had a basement, and she had found it. That night, as the triplets finally slept simultaneously, a rare miracle, Jasmine pulled out the business card of Stephen Davis, a former Reynolds Investments client who had always complimented her marketing strategies. He now ran a small but growing organic cosmetics company in Brooklyn. With Jordan cradled in one arm, Jasmine dialed the number. "Mr. Davis, this is Jasmine Washington." She took a deep breath. "I have a proposal that will revolutionize your digital marketing approach." In that small bedroom in the Bronx, with 3 newborn babies and mounting bills, Jasmine didn't know she was making the call that would lead to building an empire that would one day make Michael Reynolds beg for a chance to know the sons he had rejected. Stephen Davis remained silent for several moments after Jasmine finished explaining her marketing proposal. She held her breath, adjusting Jordan against her shoulder while straining to hear any sounds from the bassinet where Aaron had started to stir. "Let me get this straight," Davis finally said. "You want to implement a predictive analytics system for a small organic cosmetics company with just 3 retail locations?" "Yes," Jasmine replied, her voice steadier than she felt. "Your current digital strategy is wasting 60% of your ad spend on customers who will never convert. I can redirect that budget to target high-probability purchasers and triple your ROI within 90 days. Another pause. "The Reynolds girl," Davis said suddenly. "That's where I know you from. You handled our account at Reynolds Investments." "I did," Jasmine confirmed, wincing at the association but refusing to deny her past. "Heard you left suddenly. Office rumors suggested a personal situation." Jasmine looked down at Jordan's tiny face. "I'm dealing with the personal situation now, Mr. Davis, but my professional capabilities haven't changed." Davis chuckled. "Fair enough. But why should I trust my marketing to a new mother with triplets when I could hire an established agency?" "Because I have more to prove than any agency in this city," Jasmine answered without hesitation. "And because I know your customer demographic better than anyone at Reynolds ever did. They saw you as a small account. I see you as the next Keels." 3 days later, Jasmine sat at her mother's kitchen table, laptop open, 3 bassinets arranged around her. On the screen was the first draft of a comprehensive digital marketing strategy for Davis Organics. She had worked on it between feedings, diaper changes, and the precious few moments when all 3 boys slept simultaneously. "When did you last sleep?" Loretta asked, entering the kitchen in her nurse's scrubs, ready for another 12-hour shift. "I dozed for an hour around 4, Jasmine replied, not looking up from her screen. "Aaron had colic." Loretta frowned, placing a hand on her daughter's shoulder. "This isn't sustainable, Jasmine. You can't function on an hour of sleep." "I don't have a choice, Mom." Jasmine rubbed her eyes, which burned from exhaustion. "Davis is paying me $3,000 for this strategy. That covers rent and part of the hospital bills." As if on cue, Elijah began to cry, his wails soon joined by his brothers in perfect harmony. The triplet effect, one starts, all follow, had become the soundtrack of their lives. "I've got them," Loretta sighed. "Finish your work, but promise me you'll sleep when I get back tonight." 3 weeks into implementing her strategy for Davis Organics, Jasmine's phone rang at 2 in the morning. She answered immediately, having learned to wake fully at the slightest sound. "Jasmine? It's Stephen Davis. I know it's late, but I just saw the analytics dashboard. What the hell did you do?" Her heart sank. "Is there a problem with the numbers?" "Problem? Our online sales are up 87%. We had to restock our signature face oil twice this week. I've been in this business 15 years and never seen a spike like this." Relief washed over her. "I told you the targeting was inefficient. We're reaching the right customers now. I need you to expand this. Full digital marketing overhaul. Whatever you were going to charge, double it." After hanging up, Jasmine allowed herself a moment of pure joy, twirling around the small bedroom where her sons slept. Miracle of miracles, simultaneously. This was it, the first real validation of her business concept. Not just a freelance gig, but the foundation of what Triad Solutions could become. The next morning, she accidentally spilled coffee over her carefully prepared analytics reports while trying to soothe a screaming Elijah. Looking down at the ruined papers, Jasmine felt tears of frustration building. "I can't do this," she whispered, overwhelmed by the impossible juggling act of motherhood and entrepreneurship. Then her eyes fell on the yellow, sticky note she'd transferred from the wall to her laptop. "You were never enough." Michael's words, meant to diminish her, now served as perverse motivation. Jasmine took a deep breath, placed Elijah in his swing, and reprinted the reports. She would be enough. She had to be. By the time the triplets were 6 months old, Davis Organics had tripled its online sales. Stephen Davis became Jasmine's evangelist, recommending her to other small business owners in Brooklyn and Queens. She developed a proprietary algorithm that analyzed customer behavior patterns and predicted purchasing likelihood with unprecedented accuracy. Working from the kitchen table was no longer feasible as her client list grew. The boys were becoming more mobile, more curious, more demanding of space. Jasmine needed an office, a real one. "You're thinking of renting commercial space?" Loretta asked incredulously when Jasmine mentioned her plan. "With what money?" "I've saved almost every dollar from these consulting jobs," Jasmine explained. "I found a small office in Mott Haven. It's nothing fancy, just 600 square feet, but the rent is manageable. And the boys? They'll come with me until I can afford childcare." The small office space on East 138th Street had water stains on the ceiling and windows that barely opened, but to Jasmine it represented the first real step toward building her company. She furnished it with second-hand desks from a business liquidation sale, set up a play area for the boys in one corner, and officially registered Triad Solutions, LLC. Her client roster grew to 11 small businesses, each paying monthly retainers for her digital marketing services. The algorithm she'd developed continued to show remarkable results, consistently outperforming traditional marketing approaches for a fraction of the cost. As word spread, Jasmine realized she needed help. The workload had become impossible to manage alone, especially with 3 increasingly active babies. After interviews with several candidates, she hired Marcus Williams, a recent computer science graduate from City College, who, despite his impressive coding skills, had been unable to find employment. "Why hasn't anyone hired you?" Jasmine asked during his interview, genuinely perplexed by his qualifications. Marcus smiled ruefully. "Being a 6'4" black man with dreadlocks tends to make tech recruiters nervous, no matter how good my GitHub portfolio is." "Their loss," Jasmine said, offering him the job on the spot. "I need someone who can help refine my predictive algorithm. The salary isn't competitive with Google, but there's equity if we succeed." With Marcus handling the technical development, Jasmine could focus on client acquisition and strategy. The office became a peculiar blend of startup and daycare, with the triplets crawling between boxes of computer equipment while Jasmine and Marcus worked furiously to meet deadlines. When Aaron developed a high fever one night, Jasmine found herself in the emergency room, laptop balanced on her knees as she put finishing touches on a presentation due the next morning. The attending physician raised an eyebrow at the sight. "Work emergency," Jasmine explained simply. "And this little guy's emergency?" the doctor asked, examining Aaron. "Equally important. I'm handling both." The doctor, a woman about Jasmine's age, nodded with unexpected understanding. "Single mom?" "Yes, triplets." "Impressive. Most people would be falling apart." Jasmine looked down at Aaron's flushed face. "Not an option." 3 days later, Davis invited Jasmine to present her results to a group of local business owners at a networking event in Brooklyn. Standing before them in the only professional outfit that still fit her post-pregnancy body, she spoke with quiet confidence about the success of her approach. "She transformed my business," Davis told the assembled entrepreneurs. "Whatever she's charging, it's worth double." That night, Jasmine received 5 new client inquiries. For the first time since the triplets' birth, She allowed herself to believe that Triad Solutions might actually succeed, that her vision of building something meaningful from the ashes of Michael's rejection wasn't just a desperate fantasy. As the boys approached their first birthday, Jasmine hired a second employee, a part-time administrative assistant who doubled as emergency childcare when client meetings demanded her full attention. The algorithm continued to evolve, delivering increasingly impressive results as Marcus refined its capabilities. On the day the official LLC registration arrived in the mail, Jasmine stood in the small office, watching her sons play on the floor mat she'd installed for them. The framed certificate read simply, Triad Solutions, LLC. She hung it carefully on the wall, next to the yellow sticky note that had become both wound and weapon. You were never enough. Look, boys, she said, kneeling beside her sons. This is the beginning of our legacy. Your legacy. Looking at the simple sign on the door of the small office in the Bronx, Jasmine couldn't possibly imagine that in just 4 years, that name would appear in 2-meter-high letters on the facade of one of Manhattan's most iconic buildings, while Reynolds Investments would be entering a steep decline. The Triad Solutions sign had become a beacon of possibility in the 3 years since Jasmine had hung it on that small office door in the Bronx. Now it adorned the entrance to a modest but functional office space housing 12 employees, a far cry from the corporate luxury of Reynolds Investments, but unmistakably hers. Jasmine navigated between desks cluttered with computer monitors and marketing materials, stepping carefully around a colorful playmat where the triplets were absorbed in an educational game on their tablets. "Mama, Mira!" Jordan called out, holding up his tablet to show her a completed Spanish language exercise. "Muy bien, mi amor," Jasmine replied with a proud smile. At 3 years old, the boys were already showing signs of extraordinary intelligence. Their pediatrician had used the term gifted during their last checkup, suggesting advanced educational opportunities. "Ms. Washington, the conference call with Bright Path Foods starts in 10 minutes, her assistant reminded her. "Thanks, Alicia. Boys, Tia Alicia will watch you while Mommy has her meeting, okay?" The boys nodded, already returning to their tablets. Jasmine adjusted Aaron's bow tie. He had a preschool presentation that afternoon and had insisted on dressing formally, like Mommy does for work. In her small office, Jasmine reviewed her presentation one last time. The Tech Innovation Summit invitation had arrived unexpectedly last month, her first opportunity to speak at a major industry event. The organizer had seen her work for several small businesses that had dramatically outperformed their larger competitors using her proprietary platform. 3 hours later, Jasmine stood in the bathroom of the Javits Center, trying to calm her nerves. The panel discussion on disruption in digital marketing would mark her first public speaking engagement since leaving Reynolds Investments, since Boston, since Michael. "You've got this," she told her reflection. Her natural hair, once straightened daily to conform to corporate expectations, now formed a crown of defined curls. Her suit, still from a budget retailer but impeccably tailored, represented the careful balance she maintained between reinvesting in the business and projecting success. The moderator's introduction pulled her from her thoughts. Our next panelist developed a groundbreaking approach to predictive analytics for small businesses. Please welcome Jasmine Washington, founder and CEO of Triad Solutions. The bright lights momentarily blinded her as she took her seat on stage. The audience, a sea of tech professionals, investors, and industry analysts, seemed impossibly vast after years of pitching to small business owners across a desk. "Ms. Washington," the moderator began, "your platform has shown remarkable results for businesses traditionally underserved by major marketing firms. Can you explain your approach?" Jasmine hesitated, her mouth suddenly dry. Then she remembered the yellow sticky note, now laminated and kept in her wallet. "You were never enough." The words that had once cut her now fueled her. "Traditional marketing relies on demographic assumptions," she began, her voice finding strength. "But people aren't statistics. My algorithm analyzes behavioral patterns and emotional triggers that predict purchasing decisions with 87% accuracy, nearly double the industry standard. As she explained her methodology, Jasmine noticed a distinguished older man in the front row leaning forward, taking notes with intense concentration. Something about him seemed vaguely familiar, but she couldn't place him. After the panel, as attendees networked over coffee, the man approached her. "Ms. Washington, remarkable presentation." He extended his hand. "Charles Thompson, Thompson Enterprises." The name registered immediately. Charles Thompson, legendary investor, technology pioneer, and according to business magazines, one of the 20 most influential people in American finance. "It's an honor, Mr. Thompson," Jasmine replied, shaking his hand firmly while wondering why he'd singled her out among dozens of more established speakers. "Your approach to predictive analytics is fascinating. We should talk further. Are you free for dinner tomorrow?" That night, Jasmine researched Charles Thompson extensively. Born into working-class Detroit, he'd built Thompson Enterprises from nothing into a technology and investment powerhouse. Current net worth, $4.2 billion. Then she found the connection that made her stomach clench. Articles mentioning Thompson as an early mentor to Michael Reynolds. Why would he approach me? She wondered aloud, scrolling through business journals in her quiet apartment after putting the boys to bed. Is this some kind of trap? Did Michael send him? Despite her suspicions, Jasmine couldn't ignore the opportunity. Meeting with Thompson could mean connections, potential investment, legitimacy in circles that had previously been closed to her. She agreed to meet him at a quiet cafe in Greenwich Village rather than the upscale restaurant he'd suggested. "Testing my reaction to a downgrade in venue?" Thompson asked with surprising candor when they met the following afternoon. His eyes, sharp but not unkind, assessed her. "Ensuring neutral territory," Jasmine replied honestly. Thompson smiled. "Smart. You've built something remarkable, Ms. Washington. I've spent the last 24 hours reviewing everything I could find about Triad Solutions. Your results are consistently exceptional. Thank you. We work hard. I'd like to see a demonstration of your platform. The real thing, not a polished investor presentation." "I don't have an investor presentation," Jasmine admitted. "I've never sought outside funding." Thompson's eyebrows rose. "Even more impressive. Tomorrow at my office? Bring your actual working model." The Thompson Enterprises headquarters in Midtown occupied 30 floors of a gleaming skyscraper, the kind of corporate monument Jasmine had once dreamed of working in. Now, sitting across from Charles Thompson in his minimalist office, she felt strangely calm as she opened her laptop. "This is our current algorithm," she explained, navigating through the interface. "It aggregates consumer behavior data, identifies emotional triggers in purchasing patterns, and predicts conversion likelihood with specific messaging approaches." For the next hour, she demonstrated how the platform had transformed results for Davis Organics and several other clients. Thompson asked incisive questions, occasionally nodding with approval. "This is revolutionary," he finally said. "You've created something that combines artificial intelligence with behavioral psychology at a level even Google hasn't achieved." Jasmine waited, sensing there was more. "I know Michael Reynolds," Thompson said suddenly, his tone measured. "I was his mentor early in his career." Jasmine's face remained carefully neutral. "I'm aware. I left the Reynolds Investments Board 2 years ago due to ethical disagreements with their leadership approach." Thompson leaned forward. "I've always disapproved of how Michael conducts business and personal matters." The implication hung in the air. How much did he know about her history with Michael? "My interest in your company has nothing to do with Michael Reynolds," Thompson continued. "It's about recognizing extraordinary talent and vision. I want to invest in Triad Solutions." Jasmine felt lightheaded. "May I ask why? You typically invest in established companies or cutting-edge tech startups. We're neither." "But you will be." Thompson smiled. "I'm offering $50 million for 15% equity." The number struck Jasmine like a physical blow. $50 million. An implied valuation of over $330 million for her small company born from rejection and desperation. That would mean I retain controlling interest, she said carefully. Absolutely. I want to accelerate what you're building, not take it over. Thompson's eyes crinkled. I invest in people first, ideas second. You, Ms. Washington, are the most impressive person I've met in years. 1 week later, surrounded by lawyers in Thompson's conference room, Jasmine signed the papers that made the investment official. Her hands didn't tremble, though her heart raced. 3 years of working from a kitchen table, of balancing babies and business plans, of proving her worth to clients who initially doubted her, had led to this moment. Congratulations, partner, Thompson said as cameras flashed to document the historic agreement. That evening, Jasmine called her mother with news that made Loretta weep with joy. Mom, I think we just became millionaires. Later, sitting on the floor of their small apartment with her sons, Jasmine showed them the signed contract. See this paper? It means we can buy a new home, a better one. With a yard? Aaron asked hopefully. Yes, with a yard, Jasmine promised, her eyes filling with tears of relief and vindication. While signing the contract that valued her company at hundreds of millions, Jasmine didn't imagine that this would be merely the first step of a partnership that would not only transform her life, but eventually give her the power to acquire Reynolds Investments itself, leaving Michael Reynolds effectively working for her. The contract with Thompson Enterprises transformed Triad Solutions overnight. While the $50 million investment represented extraordinary validation, it was the doors that suddenly opened, doors that had been firmly closed to a single black mother from the Bronx, that truly changed everything. The Flatiron District? Jasmine asked, staring at the real estate prospectus Charles had placed before her. This is prime Manhattan office space. Location matters in this industry, Charles replied, his eyes twinkling. Your technology deserves a showcase worthy of its innovation. Plus, clients take you more seriously when you're not operating out of a converted storage room in the Bronx. 2 weeks later, Jasmine stood in the center of a gleaming office space occupying half of the 23rd floor in one of the Flatiron District's most prestigious buildings. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered panoramic views of Manhattan, while the interior featured polished concrete floors, exposed brick walls, and space for up to 50 employees. This is really ours? Marcus asked, the company's first employee still unable to believe their rapid ascent. All ours, Jasmine confirmed, watching as the movers brought in sleek modern desks and ergonomic chairs, a far cry from the second-hand furniture they'd been using. With the new headquarters came rapid expansion. Jasmine poached top talent from major tech firms and marketing agencies, offering competitive salaries and something more valuable, equity in a company that industry insiders were suddenly calling the next big thing. In 18 months, Triad Solutions grew from 12 employees to 300, occupying 3 full floors of the building. The company's proprietary algorithm, now called Emotional IQ, expanded beyond retail marketing into healthcare, finance, and entertainment, predicting consumer behavior with uncanny accuracy. As revenue exploded, so did Jasmine's personal wealth. The girl who once had $237 in her bank account now had a net worth approaching $100 million. We need to discuss your living situation, Charles said during one of their weekly strategy sessions. What's wrong with where I live? Jasmine asked defensively. She had upgraded from her mother's apartment to a modest 3-bedroom in a safe neighborhood, but nothing extravagant. Nothing's wrong with it, Charles replied carefully. But perception matters. Clients and investors visit the homes of executives. Your current address doesn't reflect your company's success. 2 months later, Jasmine closed on a 5-bedroom apartment overlooking Central Park West. With Loretta now living in a beautiful condo Jasmine had purchased for her nearby, the spacious apartment became a showcase not just of her success, but of her unwavering commitment to creating a nurturing environment for her sons. The triplets, now 4 years old, raced through the enormous rooms, their excited voices echoing off high ceilings and designer furniture. "Can we really live here, Mama?" Aaron asked, his eyes wide as he pressed his face against the window overlooking the park. "Yes, baby," Jasmine answered, tears threatening as she remembered the nights she'd spent on benches at Boston's South Station, homeless and pregnant. "This is our home now." As Triad Solutions flourished, so did the boys. Jasmine had enrolled them in the prestigious Dalton School, where their exceptional intelligence quickly became apparent. By age 4, they were already fluent in English, Spanish, and beginning Mandarin Chinese, a language Jasmine had insisted they learn after securing several major Chinese corporations as clients. "Mrs. Washington," their teacher said during a parent-teacher conference, "your son's cognitive abilities are truly extraordinary. They're performing at a second-grade level in mathematics and reading." "Ms. Washington," Jasmine corrected gently, "and thank you. They've always been quick learners." Despite her grueling schedule as CEO, Jasmine maintained an ironclad rule: never miss an important moment in her sons' lives. When Aaron had his first piano recital, she rescheduled a meeting with Japanese investors. When Elijah won the preschool science fair, she attended despite being in the middle of closing a major acquisition. When Jordan came down with strep throat, she worked from his bedside for 3 days. "You don't have to do everything yourself," Charles advised her one evening as they worked late at the office. "Most CEOs have teams that handle day-to-day operations." "I'm not most CEOs," Jasmine replied without looking up from her laptop. "And they're not just any children." Their professional relationship had evolved into a genuine friendship. Charles, 60 years old and twice divorced, had no children of his own. He found in Jasmine not just a brilliant business partner, but a connection to the family life he'd sacrificed for career success. In the Triplets, he discovered the grandchildren he'd never expected to have. It began with small gestures, Charles bringing educational toys specifically selected for each boy's interests, attending their school events when Jasmine was double-booked, teaching them to throw a baseball in Central Park on Sunday afternoons. "The boys have really taken to you," Jasmine observed one Sunday evening as Charles prepared to leave after spending the day with them. "They're remarkable children," he replied, his usual business-like demeanor softened. "You've done an extraordinary job raising them, especially given the circumstances." Jasmine tilted her head. "What do you know about the circumstances, Charles?" He hesitated. "I know enough. Michael's behavior doesn't surprise me. It's consistent with patterns I observed years ago, which is why I eventually distanced myself professionally." The mention of Michael's name no longer triggered pain. Instead, Jasmine felt a curious detachment, as if he belonged to another lifetime. That detachment was tested the following morning when her news alerts highlighted a troubling headline: "Reynolds Investments faces difficulties after failed Asian expansion." The article detailed how Michael's aggressive push into Asian markets had backfired spectacularly, with the company losing several major clients and facing potential layoffs. A photo showed Michael looking harried and tense outside the company's Boston headquarters, a stark contrast to his usual polished appearance. "Karma," Jasmine murmured, closing the article. As summer turned to fall, Charles and Jasmine's friendship deepened through long strategy sessions and shared concerns for the company's future. The triplets' affection for him grew, with the boys often asking when Uncle Charles would visit again. On a crisp October evening, Charles invited Jasmine to dinner at his penthouse overlooking the Hudson River. After discussing quarterly projections over excellently prepared salmon, he set aside his business persona entirely. "Jasmine, I need to discuss something personal with you," he began, uncharacteristically hesitant. "What is it?" "Over these past months, I've developed feelings for you and the boys. Not just professional admiration or friendly affection. We've become a family of sorts." Jasmine set down her wine glass carefully. "Charles, you're 60 years old. I'm 31. "I'm well aware of the age difference," he replied with a self-deprecating smile. I'm not proposing a conventional romantic relationship. I'm suggesting something more pragmatic but equally meaningful. I'm listening. A marriage of partnership, Charles explained. It would benefit our business interests, merging our assets, creating trust structures for the boys, securing their future. More importantly, it would give them a legal father, someone committed to their well-being. Jasmine studied him carefully. People would talk. People always talk. He shrugged. What matters is what we build together. 3 days later, Jasmine visited her mother to discuss Charles's unexpected proposal. "He wants to marry you?" Loretta asked, eyebrows raised. "A man nearly twice your age? It's not a romantic proposal, Mom. It's a partnership, a legal arrangement that benefits everyone, especially the boys." Loretta considered this. "And how do you feel about him?" "I respect him enormously. I trust him. The boys adore him." Jasmine paused. "It's not passion, but it's something real, something solid." 2 months later, a small ceremony in Charles's penthouse formalized their arrangement. Only family and close friends attended, a stark contrast to the society weddings that filled the pages of Vanity Fair and Town and Country. The boys, impeccable in miniature tuxedos, stood proudly beside their mother as she exchanged simple vows with Charles. There was no elaborately decorated cake, no diamond-studded bridal gown, no orchestra, just a quiet commitment between two people who had found unexpected connection. During the intimate reception, Charles tapped his glass for attention. "Today marks not just my marriage to an extraordinary woman," he announced, his voice thick with emotion, "but also my formal adoption of 3 extraordinary boys. Aaron, Elijah, and Jordan are now, legally and in every way that matters, my sons." Tears streamed down Jasmine's face as the boys rushed to hug Charles, their small arms wrapped tightly around his legs. This was something Michael had never offered, something she had never expected to find, a man who saw her children not as burdens or complications, but as treasures. Later that evening, as guests departed and the boys slept soundly in their rooms, Charles showed Jasmine a document he'd been saving for this moment. Financial reports indicating that Reynolds Investments was seeking potential buyers after continued losses in the Asian market. "Something to consider for the future," he said simply. In that small wedding celebration, as Charles announced the official adoption of the boys, no one could imagine that in less than a year, Jasmine Washington Thompson would be sitting at the negotiating table, preparing to acquire controlling interest in the company of the man who had once declared she would never be enough for his world. The documents Charles had shown Jasmine after their wedding celebration planted a seed that grew steadily over the following months. Reynolds Investments, the company that had once been her employer, the foundation of Michael's identity, the place where he had discarded her when she became inconvenient, was weakening. The thought lingered in the back of her mind as Triad Solutions continued its meteoric rise. 1 year after their wedding, Jasmine stood at the window of her corner office in the Flatiron Building, watching Manhattan's relentless rhythm below. The Triad Solutions logo, 3 interlocking triangles representing data, emotion, and behavior, now adorned the building's entrance. Forbes had valued the company at $2 billion in their latest issue, featuring Jasmine on the cover with the headline, "The Digital Revolution Has a Name, Jasmine Washington Thompson and the $2 billion Empire." "Ms. Washington, your 3 o'clock is here," her executive assistant announced through the intercom. "Thank you, Claire. And remember, I need to leave by 5 for Jordan's piano recital. Already arranged the car service, and Dr. Thompson called. He'll meet you there." Jasmine smiled at the mention of Charles. Despite their unconventional arrangement, he had become an exceptional father to the boys, attending every school event, helping with homework, and providing the stable male presence she had worried they might never have. Completing her PhD in behavioral analysis at Harvard while running Triad Solutions had been grueling, but the credential added academic legitimacy to her revolutionary approach. The ceremony 3 months ago, with Charles and the boys watching proudly from the audience, had been a moment of profound vindication. Later that evening, after Jordan's flawless rendition of Beethoven's Für Elise earned him enthusiastic applause, the family returned to their Central Park apartment. The triplets, now 5 years old and already showing distinct personalities, raced to their playroom to continue a Mandarin language exercise they'd started earlier. "Their Mandarin teacher says they're nearly conversational already," Jasmine remarked, slipping off her heels. "Not surprising," Charles replied, loosening his tie. "They've inherited their mother's exceptional intelligence and determination." He paused, his expression shifting to something more serious. "Speaking of inheritance, we need to discuss something important. Can we talk in my study?" In the book-lined room that had become Charles's domain within their shared home, he pulled out a file marked "Confidential" and placed it on his desk. "Reynolds Investments is officially for sale," he stated without preamble. Jasmine felt an odd sensation. Not quite shock, not quite excitement. "How bad is it?" "Worse than the financial press knows," Charles replied, opening the file to reveal detailed reports. Michael made catastrophic investments in Asia, high-risk ventures that looked impressive on quarterly reports but had no sustainable foundation. They've lost 5 major clients in the last quarter alone. Jasmine studied the numbers, her analytical mind quickly grasping the implications. "They're hemorrhaging cash. And reputation," Charles added. "The Reynolds name doesn't carry the weight it once did. The board is quietly seeking buyers before word spreads further." Jasmine leaned back in her chair, contemplating the information. "Are you suggesting what I think you're suggesting?" Charles's eyes twinkled. "Triad Solutions has the capital. We've been looking to expand into wealth management. It's a logical acquisition, professionally speaking." "And personally speaking?" Jasmine asked quietly. "That's entirely your decision." Charles's expression softened. "I know what Michael did to you. I know the words he used. Buying his company would be poetically appropriate." Jasmine stood and walked to the window, looking out at the Central Park landscape bathed in evening light. 5 years ago, she had been homeless, pregnant, and devastated by rejection. Now she commanded a technology empire that could potentially swallow the company that had once discarded her. "It wouldn't be revenge," she said finally. "It would be business." "Of course," Charles agreed, though his slight smile suggested he understood the deeper satisfaction it might bring. For 3 weeks, they worked with financial analysts to structure an offer. The potential acquisition of Reynolds Investments by Triad Solutions would be complex, requiring careful timing and messaging. During a late-night strategy session, Jasmine had a sudden realization. "The Metropolitan Business Summit," she said, looking up from her laptop. "It's next month. Michael always attends. It's where Reynolds Investments announces their annual forecasts." Charles raised an eyebrow. "Are you thinking what I think you're thinking?" "I want to announce the acquisition there," Jasmine confirmed. "Not in a press release, not in a private meeting. I want to stand on that stage and tell the entire financial world that Triad Solutions now owns Reynolds Investments." "That's bold," Charles remarked, studying her expression. "Are you sure this isn't personal?" Jasmine considered the question carefully. "It's not about revenge, Charles. It's about closure, about showing the boys, showing myself, that rejection doesn't define value, that Michael's assessment of what I was worth was catastrophically wrong." The following morning, their offer was submitted through intermediaries. 3 days later, it was accepted with surprising speed, the Reynolds board clearly eager to complete the transaction before their financial situation deteriorated further. As the legal teams finalized details, Jasmine focused on selecting the perfect outfit for the announcement. In her massive walk-in closet, she ran her fingers over a red Valentino suit still in its garment bag, purchased months ago but saved for a special occasion. "This one," she murmured to herself. "Red for power, red for visibility, red so he can't possibly miss me." The night before the summit, Jasmine helped the boys try on the miniature suits she'd had custom made for them. Aaron, always the most inquisitive, frowned as she adjusted his bow tie. "Why do we need to wear suits, Mommy? You said we can wear what we want to be comfortable." Jasmine smiled, smoothing his collar. "Tomorrow is a special day, sweetheart. You're going to learn about the legacy I've built for you." "Auntie Loretta says you're the most important woman in New York," Jordan observed, always the most perceptive of the three. "Grandma exaggerates," Jasmine laughed. "But I've worked very hard to make sure you never have to feel that you're not enough for someone." After putting the boys to bed, Jasmine stepped onto the terrace of their apartment. Below, Manhattan's lights sparkled like witnesses to her journey. In 5 years, she had transformed $500 into a company valued at $2 billion. She had built a secure home for her children. She had conquered a sector dominated by white men who had initially dismissed her as a curiosity at best, an interloper at worst. Tomorrow the circle would close when she faced Michael for the first time since that night in Boston. As she prepared for bed, Jasmine took the laminated yellow sticky note from her wallet, "You were never enough," and placed it on her nightstand. Tomorrow would be the last day she would carry it. After the announcement, she would finally be free to discard it, just as Michael had once discarded her. In her dreams that night, she didn't see Michael's face or relive the humiliation of his rejection. Instead, she saw her sons standing tall, proud of their mother, secure in their worth. She saw herself not as the desperate pregnant woman sleeping on station benches, but as the architect of her own destiny. Morning arrived with crystalline clarity. As Jasmine dressed in the red Valentino suit, applied her makeup with precision, and styled her natural hair into a crown of defined curls, she felt no anxiety, only a profound sense of rightness. Charles, impeccable in a charcoal Tom Ford suit, helped the boys with their final preparations. "Ready to make history?" he asked her with a warm smile. "Ready to close a chapter," she replied, taking one last look at the sticky note before leaving it behind on her dresser. While contemplating the lights of New York on the eve of the big announcement, Jasmine couldn't imagine the expression on Michael's face when he realized that the woman he had discarded as insufficient now owned his company, his family legacy, and, most devastating to his ego, that the 3 identical boys at her side were the sons he never knew. The lights of Manhattan seemed to affirm Jasmine's decision as the Thompson family car glided toward the Mandarin Oriental. Today was not about revenge, it was about completion. Charles squeezed her hand reassuringly while the triplets, perfect miniatures of elegance in their custom suits, whispered excitedly in Mandarin about the skyscrapers towering above them. The Metropolitan Business Summit represented the pinnacle of financial influence in America. Held annually in the Mandarin Oriental's grand ballroom overlooking Central Park, it gathered the 500 most powerful CEOs, investors, and industry leaders to discuss economic trends and showcase major corporate announcements. Michael Reynolds arrived alone. His Hermes tie, once a confident statement, now seemed like overcompensation as he adjusted it nervously before entering the venue. At 36, he still possessed the patrician features and Harvard-polished charm that had opened doors throughout his life, but new worry lines etched his forehead, and his once perfect smile appeared strained as he greeted former associates. "Need to maintain appearances," he muttered to himself, accepting a glass of bourbon from a passing waiter. The last 2 years had been brutal for Reynolds' investments. His ambitious Asian expansion had collapsed spectacularly, hemorrhaging capital and clients. 5 major accounts had transferred their portfolios to competitors in the past quarter alone. The board was in revolt, shareholders were demanding answers, and the acquisition he'd so reluctantly agreed to remained confidential until today's announcement. "Michael, it's been too long," a familiar voice called. Michael turned to find Charles Thompson approaching with measured steps. His former mentor looked exactly as Michael remembered, immaculately dressed, radiating calm authority, analyzing everything with those penetrating eyes that had once guided his career before their professional relationship fractured. "Charles," Michael replied, plastering on his most convincing smile while extending his hand. "Good to see you. I've heard rumors you're working on something significant." Charles's handshake was firm, his smile enigmatic. "Indeed. Actually, we'll be announcing it shortly. You should take a seat in the front row." Before Michael could probe further, Charles moved away, leaving him puzzled. What did Thompson Enterprises have to do with today's announcement about Reynolds Investments? The buyer's identity had been shielded behind layers of holding companies and NDAs. The lights dimmed as Michael claimed a seat in the front row, bourbon in hand, still absently checking messages on his phone. The master of ceremonies welcomed the assembled elite and outlined the day's agenda before introducing the keynote speaker. "Ladies and gentlemen, we begin with one of the most significant partnership announcements of the year. Thompson Enterprises is proud to present our new partner and my official successor as CEO, the founder of Triad Solutions, now valued at $2 billion. A woman who transformed digital marketing and predictive analytics." Michael took another sip of bourbon, half listening while responding to an urgent text from his CFO about further client departures. "Please welcome Jasmine Washington Thompson and family." The name jolted Michael's attention to the stage. It couldn't be, surely a coincidence, but as he looked up, his world collapsed into a singularity of shock. Walking confidently onto the stage was Jasmine, almost unrecognizable in her poise and elegance, wearing a striking red Valentino suit that contrasted dramatically with her dark skin. Her hair, once straightened to conform to corporate expectations, now proudly displayed natural curls in a modern, powerful cut. Michael choked on his bourbon when he saw 3 identical boys following her, each wearing perfectly tailored miniature executive suits. Denial was impossible. The boys had his bone structure, his chin, but skin several shades darker and curly hair like Jasmine's. "As founder and CEO of Triad Solutions," Jasmine began, her melodious voice resonating throughout the hushed ballroom, "I'm pleased to announce that we have just acquired majority ownership in Reynolds Investments, expanding our portfolio into wealth management and international investments." The room erupted in applause while Michael felt blood draining from his face. His company. She had bought his company. "Boston taught me that some people see value only in surnames and bank accounts," Jasmine continued, looking directly at Michael for the first time. "But Manhattan showed me that true value is built with integrity, tireless work, and the courage to transform 'you'll never be enough' into an empire." Curious glances alternated between Jasmine on stage and Michael in the front row. Whispers began as people noticed the undeniable resemblance between the boys and the visibly disturbed man. "I'd like to introduce the next generation of Triad Solutions, Aaron, Elijah, and Jordan Washington Thompson, my 5-year-old sons and now minority shareholders in Reynolds Investments." The 3 boys waved to the audience with surprising confidence for children so young. One of them, Michael couldn't distinguish which, looked directly at him with the same penetrating eyes he saw in the mirror every morning. "Michael Reynolds," Charles's voice returned to the microphone, "your presence is requested on stage for the formalization of the transition." Hundreds of pairs of eyes turned toward Michael. His knees trembled as he stood, walking like a man toward the gallows. In 5 years, he had gone from Prince of Boston's financial elite to a debt-ridden executive whose company had just been purchased by the woman he had abandoned while pregnant. On stage, Jasmine extended her hand for a formal shake, her face a mask of professionalism. The touch of her skin sent an electric current through Michael's arm, memories of what he had thrown away. "Mr. Reynolds," Jasmine said in a strictly professional tone, "Triad Solutions values your experience and hopes you'll remain with the company during the transition." "Jasmine, he began quietly. "Ms. Washington, please," she corrected him with a polite smile for the cameras. "Or Dr. Washington, if you prefer to acknowledge my PhD in behavioral analysis from Harvard that I completed last year." Camera flashes exploded as Charles Thompson finalized the acquisition details. When the event transitioned to the cocktail reception, Michael finally managed a relatively private moment with Jasmine near the bar. "You planned this," he accused in a low voice. "You knew I would be here." "Not everything," Jasmine replied calmly, accepting a champagne flute from a waiter. "I didn't plan for your company to nearly fail due to mismanagement. That was your achievement. Those boys, they're your biological children? Yes. Your legal children? No. Charles Thompson adopted them 3 years ago when we married." Michael felt as if he'd been punched in the stomach. "You married Charles? He's old enough to be your father." Always so obsessed with appearances, Jasmine shook her head. "Charles is my business partner and the boy's legal father. Our marriage was a strategic and emotional decision that benefited all of us. You can't keep my children away from me. I have rights." Jasmine took a sip of champagne before responding. "Rights? Interesting that you mention that now. I have recorded every word from that night in Boston. You would be a burden to my corporate and family image. Do yourself a favor and disappear. Remember that? I kept that check, you know. I never cashed it." A CNBC reporter approached with a microphone and camera. "Ms. Washington, could we have a statement about the acquisition?" "Certainly," Jasmine smiled professionally. "Reynolds Investments has an important legacy that Triad Solutions intends to honor, even as we implement necessary changes. Mr. Reynolds here has agreed to stay on as a consultant, reporting directly to our Junior Executive Committee." "Junior Executive Committee?" asked the reporter. "Yes, an innovative program we've created to introduce young talent to the corporate world from an early age. My sons, Aaron, Elijah, and Jordan, will be the first participants, overseeing specific projects under adult supervision, of course." Michael paled, realizing the implication. He would report to the very children he had rejected. As the reporter moved away, Jasmine leaned closer to Michael. "The boys' office hours are from 4 to 5 on Thursdays. They're particularly interested in learning about failed Asian market expansions. A cautionary tale, you might say." Before Michael could respond, she turned away to greet a group of admiring investors, leaving him standing alone, just as he had left her 5 years ago. Looking around the magnificent ballroom where he had once commanded respect, Michael now saw only curious or pitying glances. His fiancée would soon learn about the triplets from the inevitable media coverage. His mother would discover the grandchildren he had denied. His remaining clients would question his judgment even more deeply. In a single announcement, Jasmine Washington Thompson had not taken revenge. She had simply allowed his own actions to catch up with him in the most public way possible. While the photographers captured the historic handshake, no one besides Jasmine and Michael understood the true significance of that moment. But the next morning, when the New York Post would splash the headline, "Wall Street Drama, CEO Buys Company of Man Who Abandoned Her Pregnant with Triplets," the entire world would learn the truth Michael had tried to bury 5 years earlier. The cameras continued to flash around Jasmine and Michael as they stood locked in that historic handshake, her grip firm and unyielding, his increasingly clammy. To the onlookers, it appeared to be a standard business formality. Only the two of them understood the seismic shift occurring beneath the polished marble floor of the Mandarin Oriental Ballroom. Dawn broke over Manhattan the following morning with headlines that shattered whatever remained of Michael Reynolds' carefully constructed facade. The Wall Street Journal's front page declared, "The redemption of Jasmine Washington, from fired analyst to billionaire CEO." Bloomberg published an extensive profile titled, "The Triad Solutions Empire: How a Single Mother Revolutionized Digital Marketing." But it was the New York Post that delivered the killing blow with its sensationalist headline, "Wall Street Drama, CEO Buys Company of Man Who Abandoned Her Pregnant with Triplets." The accompanying photo showed Jasmine in her commanding red Valentino suit standing confidently beside the 3 boys, with Michael looking ashen in the background. Michael awoke to his phone exploding with notifications. 6 missed calls from his mother in Boston. 12 text messages from business associates, and a single devastating Instagram post from Catherine Blackwell that had already garnered 10,000 sympathetic comments. After disturbing revelations about Michael Reynolds' character and hidden past, I am announcing the end of our engagement. I wish his children, whom I never knew existed, all the best. Catherine had tagged every society publication in her announcement, ensuring maximum exposure. 4 years of engagement, culminating in a wedding planned at the Plaza Hotel next month, erased with a single post. The diamond ring he'd spent $300,000 on was notably absent from her manicured hand in the selfie she'd attached. His mother's voicemail was worse. "Michael Andrew Reynolds, you abandoned a woman pregnant with my grandchildren. How could you? Call me immediately." The weight of public humiliation pressed down on Michael as he dragged himself to the Triad Solutions headquarters, where he'd been instructed to report by 9 o'clock. The receptionist, a young black woman with natural hair styled similarly to Jasmine's, barely contained her knowing smirk as she directed him to human resources. "Mr. Reynolds," the HR director greeted him with professional detachment, "here's your onboarding packet. You've been assigned to Office 4B in the subsection." "Subsection?" "The basement level," she clarified, not meeting his eyes. "Your security clearance, company email, and access credentials are all detailed here. Your new position is Senior Transition Consultant, reporting to the Junior Executive Committee of Innovation." Michael stared at the salary figure on his contract, 70% less than he had earned as CEO of Reynolds Investments. His office, once a corner suite with panoramic views of Boston Harbor, was now a windowless cubicle in the basement of his competitor's building. At 10 o'clock, his former secretary, now reassigned by Triad, informed him that Charles Thompson requested his presence in the main conference room. The elevator ride to the 30th floor felt interminable, each floor a reminder of how far he had fallen. The conference room took Michael's breath away, not with its opulence, though the custom walnut table and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Manhattan were impressive, but with the tableau before him. Charles Thompson sat at the head of the table, commanding and serene. To his right sat Jasmine, her posture perfect, tablet in hand, exuding quiet authority. To Charles's left sat the 3 boys, each in a specially designed executive chair, iPads before them, watching Michael with undisguised curiosity. "Michael, thank you for joining us," Charles said formally. "This is our first official post-acquisition meeting. I'd like you to formally meet Aaron, Elijah, and Jordan." The boys regarded Michael with identical expressions of intelligent assessment. Their eyes, his eyes, studied him with unsettling intensity. "Why does he look sad, Mommy?" One of them, Elijah, according to the nameplate on his miniature suit, asked. "Sometimes adults get sad when they make mistakes, sweetheart," Jasmine replied calmly, her voice devoid of malice but heavy with implication. The meeting proceeded with Charles and Jasmine outlining the restructuring plan for Reynolds Investments. Michael struggled to concentrate, his gaze repeatedly drawn to the triplets who represented everything he had thrown away. They were extraordinarily composed for 5-year-olds, occasionally whispering to each other in what sounded like Mandarin, taking notes on their iPads with surprising dexterity. When the meeting concluded and the executives filed out, Michael gathered his courage to approach Jasmine as Charles led the boys away for lunch. "We need to talk privately," he insisted, his voice low and urgent. Jasmine consulted her watch. "I have exactly 7 minutes before my next meeting." In the privacy of her spacious corner office, with its awards wall displaying the Ernst & Young Entrepreneur of the Year plaque, the Forbes cover, and numerous industry recognitions, Michael crumbled. "Jasmine, I know I made a terrible mistake, but those are my sons. I want to be part of their lives." "Now? After 5 years?" Jasmine shook her head incredulously. "Michael, you showed no interest when they were fetuses. You never asked when they were born. You didn't care during their first steps, first words, first night fevers. I was immature, scared. People change. Yes, they do." Jasmine looked out the window at the Manhattan skyline. "I changed. From a woman who believed she needed approval from men like you to a woman who built something greater than you'll ever achieve. What do you want? Revenge? You've got it. You bought my company, destroyed my engagement, publicly humiliated me. That's what you still don't understand, Michael. I didn't do any of this for revenge. I did it for survival, then for ambition, and finally for personal fulfillment. Your company was for sale because you mismanaged it. Your engagement ended because your fiancé discovered you abandoned a pregnant woman. You humiliated yourself with your own choices. Jasmine stood, indicating the conversation was over. As for the boys, they have a father, Charles, a man who loves them, who has been present for every milestone in their lives, who never questioned their worth because their mother is black or because they might tarnish some legacy. What am I supposed to do then? Michael asked, defeated. Be a good employee of Triad Solutions. Do your job. If over time you demonstrate being a different person than the one I knew in Boston, perhaps, just perhaps, we might consider some kind of relationship between you and the boys. But it will be on my terms, on their timeline. In the lobby of the building, Michael encountered Charles waiting for the elevator. You planned all this, Michael accused. You used Jasmine to get revenge on me for not following your advice years ago. Charles laughed. Michael, your ego has always been your biggest problem. Jasmine approached me with a brilliant business plan, not a sad story. I invested in her because she's a business genius. I married her because she's an extraordinary woman. I adopted the boys because I loved them as if they were my own. You were merely an irrelevant detail in the equation. The elevator doors closed on Charles's amused expression, leaving Michael alone in the vast lobby, surrounded by people rushing purposefully to meetings and opportunities that no longer included him. The name Reynolds, once his birthright and source of power, now belonged to Jasmine Washington Thompson, the woman he had deemed not enough. That afternoon, his mother called again. This time he answered. How could you, Michael? Barbara Reynolds's voice trembled with rage and disappointment. I raised you better than this. Mom, it's complicated. No, it's not, she interrupted. You abandoned your own children because their mother wasn't from our social circle. That's not complicated. It's despicable. I'm trying to fix it, he protested weakly. Fix it? His mother laughed bitterly. That woman built a $2 billion company while raising your children alone. She doesn't need you to fix anything. It's you who needs fixing, Michael. The conversation ended with his mother informing him she would be contacting Jasmine directly about meeting her grandchildren, regardless of his situation. That evening, alone in his Beacon Hill apartment, now feeling cavernous and empty without Catherine's presence, Michael stared at the online articles detailing his public fall from grace. Former associates were distancing themselves. The Reynolds Investments Board had released a statement welcoming the fresh leadership of Triad Solutions. Catherine's family had publicly rescinded his membership to their exclusive country club. In 6 months, the woman he had told was never enough, for his world would be standing on the stage of the Plaza Hotel, accepting the Businesswoman of the Year award, delivering a speech that would not only cement her place in American business history, but also offer Michael a lesson in humility he would never forget. 6 months passed like a slow-motion revelation for Michael Reynolds. His daily commute to the basement office at Triad Solutions had become a ritual of humility, each day bringing a new understanding of the empire Jasmine had built from the ruins of his rejection. The Plaza Hotel ballroom glittered with chandeliers and success on this crisp autumn evening. The annual Women in Leadership Awards by Fortune magazine represented the pinnacle of recognition for female executives in America. Perfectly arranged tables filled with the business elite surrounded a stage where in less than an hour, Jasmine Washington Thompson would be named Businesswoman of the Year. Michael adjusted his tie, no longer Hermes but a modest Brooks Brothers, and sank into his assigned seat at a distant table near the kitchen doors. His presence wasn't optional. His new employment contract included mandatory attendance at all Triad Solutions public events. The ultimate humiliation, witnessing the coronation of the woman he had once discarded. His table companions, mid-level executives from various companies, exchanged uncomfortable glances when he introduced himself. The story of Michael Reynolds and Jasmine Washington had become business world legend, a cautionary tale whispered in Harvard Business School hallways. Across the ballroom, the main table commanded attention. Jasmine had arrived in a stunning gold Versace gown that caught the light with every movement, transforming her into a living statue of success. Charles Thompson sat beside her, distinguished and proud, while the triplets, impeccably dressed in child-sized tuxedos, behaved with remarkable poise for 5-year-olds. "They look like you," whispered the woman seated next to Michael, following his gaze to the boys. Michael swallowed hard. "Yes, they do." The master of ceremonies approached the podium, and the room fell silent. "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the 25th Annual Women in Leadership Awards. Tonight, we celebrate extraordinary female visionaries who have transformed American business." Michael barely heard the opening remarks, his attention fixed on Jasmine. She looked nothing like the young analyst he had known in Boston. That woman had straightened her hair, worn modest clothing, kept her voice measured to avoid appearing too aggressive. This Jasmine radiated confidence, her natural hair styled in an elegant updo, her presence commanding respect without asking for permission. After several preliminary awards, the moment arrived. Our Businesswoman of the Year has redefined digital marketing through revolutionary behavioral analytics. From humble beginnings, she built a $2 billion enterprise while raising triplets as a single mother. Ladies and gentlemen, Jasmine Washington Thompson. The ballroom erupted in thunderous applause as Jasmine rose gracefully. The triplets beamed with pride, clapping enthusiastically for their mother. Michael found himself applauding too, the sound hollow against the roaring ovation surrounding him. Standing at the podium, crystal award in hand, Jasmine surveyed the audience with the measured confidence of someone who had earned every molecule of oxygen she breathed. 5 years ago, she began, her voice clear and resonant, a man told me that 3 black children and a single mother from the Bronx would never be welcome in places like this. Today, my sons are majority shareholders in the company that bought his. The audience applauded again, many glancing curiously in Michael's direction. He felt heat rising in his face, shame burning through his carefully constructed composure. He slowly stood, intending to slip out discreetly. "Michael Reynolds," Jasmine continued, surprising everyone by addressing him directly, "discovered the hard way that character trumps inheritance, that integrity outweighs privilege, and that the people you judge insufficient today may be the ones deciding your fate tomorrow." Michael froze between tables, paralyzed by the weight of hundreds of eyes and whispers surrounding him. "But this isn't a story about revenge," Jasmine concluded, her voice softening. "It's about consequences, about building something greater than hatred, about raising 3 extraordinary boys who will know to value people by character, not skin color or bank account. Thank you." As Jasmine left the stage to a standing ovation, Michael finally comprehended the magnitude of what he had lost. Not just a family or a company, but the chance to be a better person alongside an extraordinary woman. The remainder of the evening passed in blur. Michael remained seated, accepting occasional pitying glances from passing executives. He watched from afar as business leaders lined up to congratulate Jasmine, to connect with Charles, even to interact with the triplets, who demonstrated remarkable articulation and poise for their age. When the crowd began to disperse, Michael found himself approaching their table, drawn by a force beyond his control. Jasmine looked up, her expression neutral as he stopped before her. "Congratulations," he said, the word inadequate against the weight of their history. "Thank you, Michael," she replied evenly. An uncomfortable silence stretched between them until one of the boys, Aaron, Michael had learned to recognize him by the slight dimple in his left cheek, looked up at him with penetrating curiosity. "Are you the man from Mommy's story?" he asked innocently. Michael felt his throat constrict. Yes," The one who said Mommy wasn't enough? Jordan clarified, his expression serious beyond his years. Charles stepped in smoothly. Boys, it's getting late. Time to say goodnight to everyone. As the family gathered their belongings, Michael spoke quickly. Jasmine, your speech. Thank you for not completely destroying me. Destruction was never my goal, Michael, she answered, her voice neither warm nor cold. Construction was. Is there any possibility of someday? He gestured vaguely toward the boys, unable to articulate the request. Jasmine studied him thoughtfully. 6 months ago, you asked what you should do. I said to be a good employee, to demonstrate change. Have you? Michael nodded. I've been working with your diversity initiative, mentoring interns from underprivileged backgrounds, learning Mandarin too. Something like approval flickered across her face. Continue. In time, if the boys express interest in knowing you, we'll consider appropriate introductions. But remember, they set the pace, not you. Thank you, Michael whispered, genuine gratitude replacing his earlier resentment. Good night, Mr. Reynolds, Charles said definitively, guiding his family toward the exit. Michael watched them leave, the triplets walking between Jasmine and Charles, their small hands held securely by the adults who had chosen to love them. For the first time, he saw not what he had lost, but what the boys had gained: stability, love, and extraordinary parents who valued them completely. Outside the plaza, Jasmine settled into the back of the town car, Erin half asleep in her lap. Charles slid in beside her, with Elijah and Jordan already drifting off in the back seat. Their driver pulled smoothly into Manhattan's evening traffic. You okay? Charles asked quietly, noting her pensive expression. I'm free, Jasmine replied, gazing out at the lights of New York City. Finally, completely free. The weight she had carried for 5 years, the hurt, the rejection, the need to prove herself against Michael's cruel assessment, lifted completely as the car moved through the glittering canyon of skyscrapers. The Bronx girl who had been deemed never enough had not merely survived but redefined success on her own terms. Revenge had never been her goal. Freedom had. And now, 5 years later, she had finally claimed it completely. Erin stirred in her lap, murmuring something in his sleep. Jasmine stroked his hair gently, her heart overflowing with gratitude for these 3 miracles who had transformed her greatest pain into her greatest purpose. In creating a legacy for them, she had liberated herself. As the car turned onto Central Park West, heading home, Jasmine realized she no longer needed to carry Michael's words in her wallet or her heart. The story of Jasmine Washington was no longer about a man who had rejected her, but about a woman who had refused to accept limitations imposed by others, and in doing so, had not only transformed her own life, but created a new legacy of infinite possibilities for her children and for all people who, like her once, were considered not enough by a world that failed to recognize their true value. If you enjoyed today's video, I'm sure you'll love the next one. Don't waste time. Just click on the screen.